My phone buzzed, and when I saw his name, I smiled, thinking it was just another ordinary call from my husband. Maybe he was checking in. Maybe he wanted to grab dinner. But the moment I answered, everything changed. His voice was cold, distant, like I was a stranger. No warmth, no hesitation, just 6 words that sent a chill down my spine. I want a divorce, talk to my lawyer. At first, I thought it was a joke. A cruel, tasteless joke. Very funny, I said, waiting for him to laugh to tell me he was messing with me. But he didn't. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Then, a sigh. Just talk to my lawyer. And then, click. The line went dead. My hands suddenly clammy. What? Divorce? Just like that? No fight, no conversation, no explanation. 1 minute, I'm his wife, the woman he promised forever to, and the next, I'm being shoved towards some lawyer like a bad business deal he wants to close. Oh no. No. Something was off. This wasn't how marriages ended, not ours. We weren't perfect, sure, but we were solid. We had history. We had memories. We had love. At least I thought we did. So why? Why now? Why like this? My mind raced through every possible reason. Did he cheat? Was he in trouble? Was he, God forbid, hiding something dangerous? Because one thing was clear. A man who wants a clean break doesn't sound that nervous when making the call. And he was nervous. I could hear it in the way he exhaled, the hesitation before he spoke. It wasn't guilt. It was something else. And then it hit me. He didn't want a divorce, not really. He wanted distance. He wanted me out of the picture, fast and clean. And whatever the reason was, it wasn't because of irreconcilable differences. Number this was bigger. And I was about to find out just how deep the rabbit hole went. I didn't waste time. If he thought I was just going to roll over and accept this without a fight, he clearly forgot who he married. I called him back, straight to voicemail. Again, voicemail. A third time. Nothing. That's when the pit in my stomach grew heavier. He wasn't just avoiding a conversation, he was making sure I couldn't reach him. Fine. 2 could play that game. If he wanted me to talk to his lawyer, I'd do exactly that. But not like some helpless, abandoned wife. No, I'd walk in there with my head high, my confidence unshaken. Because something told me, whatever he was hiding, he wasn't expecting me to dig. So I did my research. I found the lawyer's office, high-end, prestigious, the kind of firm that didn't deal with messy divorces. Oh no, they specialized in clean, quick settlements. The kind where one person walks away richer and the other walks away erased. The thought made my blood boil, but I swallowed my anger. I wasn't going to let my emotions take over, not yet. I needed to see the lawyer, face to face. The next morning I walked into his office, dressed like a woman who was not to be underestimated. The receptionist gave me a once-over, her polite smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Do you have an appointment?" "I do. My husband asked me to speak to Mr. Carter." My voice was calm, steady, but inside, my heart was a drumbeat of adrenaline. The receptionist nodded, tapped a few keys, then gestured toward a sleek glass door. "He'll see you now." I stepped inside, expecting the usual, polished professionalism, a firm handshake, maybe a condescending smile. What I got was something else entirely. Mr. Carter, the so-called top attorney, looked up from his desk and froze. His face drained of colour so fast I thought he might pass out. His jaw clenched. His eyes darted to the papers in front of him. He swallowed hard. Nervous. Interesting. "Mrs. R. last name," he finally said, his voice tight. "Please, have a seat." I took my time settling in, watching him carefully. His hands, shaking, his breath, uneven. I leaned forward, folding my hands neatly in my lap. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Mr. Carter." He let out a forced chuckle, flipping through a file. "It's just, I wasn't expecting you." "Really? Because my husband made it very clear you were expecting me." That's when it happened. The moment I knew, this wasn't just a divorce. This wasn't just a man leaving his wife. because Mr. Carter's hands went completely still. His eyes flicked up to mine, and his voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Are you absolutely certain that you're his wife?" The air in the room turned suffocating. Something was very wrong, and I was about to find out exactly what. I blinked. Did I hear him correctly? "Excuse me?" My voice was steady, but my pulse was racing. Mr. Carter hesitated, his fingers gripping the edge of the file like it might slip from his hands. He exhaled sharply and leaned forward, lowering his voice as if someone might be listening. "I need to ask you again. Are you absolutely certain you're his wife?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. What kind of question is that? I've been married to him for years. I know my own husband. But even as I said it, something in his expression made my stomach twist. Mr. Carter swallowed hard, flipping through the documents again. "Mrs. Last name, I don't know how to say this, but according to these files, your husband is already married." My heart stopped. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. "I am his wife," I repeated, my voice sharper now. "That's a mistake." He shook his head, his face pale. "That's what I thought at first, too. But the documents say otherwise. Your husband is legally married to someone else. Has been for years." My hands clenched into fists. Years? Number, that was impossible. That was dash dash. I reached for the papers, snatching them out of his hands. My eyes darted over the pages, searching until I saw it. There it was. My husband's name, his signature, his marriage certificate, with another woman's name printed neatly beside his. A date. A location. My vision blurred at the edges. This wasn't a mistake. This was real. I felt the room closing in. My mind raced through memories, our wedding, our anniversaries, our life together. Had it all been a lie? Had I been the other woman all along? Or was she the fake? The anger hit me like a tidal wave. I slammed the papers onto his desk. "How long have you known?" Mr. Carter flinched at my tone. I didn't. I was only given these documents yesterday. I assumed you knew. Your husband said this was just a standard divorce settlement." I let out a bitter laugh. Standard? Oh, he was good. He had planned this. He thought I'd walk into this office, sign whatever was put in front of me, and disappear quietly. But he made one fatal mistake. He underestimated me. I took a deep breath, pushing down the storm raging inside me. "All right, Mr. Carter, I have one question for you." He nodded, still visibly shaken. "Of course." I leaned in, my voice deadly calm. "Where is my husband right now?" Mr. Carter hesitated. I don't know." Wrong answer. I grabbed my purse, stood up, and turned toward the door. Because if my husband thought he could vanish and leave me with nothing but a broken heart, he was about to learn just how dangerous a woman like me could be. I stormed out of the office, my mind spinning. My husband, no, that man, was a liar, a fraud, a coward. Married to someone else for years? And now he wanted me to just disappear with a quiet little divorce. Oh, he had no idea what he'd just started. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think logically. If he wasn't at home and his lawyer didn't know where he was, then there were only two possibilities. 1, he was running. 2, he was hiding. And I was about to find out which. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking with fury, and dialed his number, straight to voicemail. I clenched my jaw. He had blocked me. Fine, he wanted to play dirty. I could play filthy. I wasn't just some clueless wife waiting for answers. I had resources. I knew his habits, his routines. I knew the places he went when he wanted to think. More importantly, I knew where he kept his secrets, and it was time to uncover every single one of them. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. There was one place he never thought I knew about. A small apartment on the other side of town. The one he claimed was just for work. The one I had never been invited to. I had ignored it before, brushed it off as his personal space. Now I knew better. I pulled up to the building, my heart pounding. The lights were off. The parking lot was half empty. But then, there it was. His car, parked right outside. Bingo! I stepped out, slamming the door behind me. If he was in there, if he thought he could just erase me from his life like I was nothing, he was about to get the shock of his life. I marched up to the door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Then from inside, I heard movement. Oh, so he was home. I smiled to myself, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a woman who was done playing nice. I knocked one last time and then, just as I turned to leave, the door cracked open an inch. And there he was. My husband, dishevelled, barefoot, eyes wide with panic. He had the nerve to look shocked to see me. What are you doing here? He stammered. I tilted my head, crossing my arms. Funny. I was about to ask you the same thing. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I can explain. Oh, I bet you can. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Tell me, husband, does your other wife know about me? Or is she as clueless as I was? His face drained of colour. Gotcha. He tried to shut the door, but I jammed my foot in the way. Oh no, sweetheart, you're not running from this one.
He froze, his eyes darted behind me as if checking for an escape route. His hands gripped the edge of the door, knuckles turning white. I could practically see the gears in his head turning, scrambling for a way out. Too bad. There was no way out, not this time.
I leaned in, my voice dangerously low. Move! He hesitated, but he knew better than to push me. Slowly, reluctantly, he stepped back, allowing me inside. The moment I walked in, I knew. The truth wasn't just hiding in some legal document. It was right here, staring me in the face. The apartment was lived in, not some occasional work retreat. No, this was a home, a second life, a second marriage. There was a half-empty glass of wine on the coffee table, a woman's jacket draped over the couch, and then, the worst part, a framed photo sitting neatly on the shelf. My husband, smiling, arm wrapped tightly around a woman I had never seen before. I felt my blood go ice cold. I picked up the photo, running my fingers over the glass. So this is her, I murmured, more to myself than to him. Behind me, he swallowed audibly. It's not what you think. I let out a humorless laugh and turned to face him. Really? Because what I think is that my husband is a lying, cheating, two-faced piece of garbage who thought he could erase me with a signature. I stepped closer, shoving the photo against his chest. Tell me, darling, does she know about me? He didn't answer, and that told me everything. I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders back. You know what's funny? I said, my voice almost calm. I was actually worried about you. When you called me, I thought maybe something happened. Maybe you were in trouble. I let out a bitter laugh. Turns out you are the trouble. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. I arched a brow. Oh? And how was I supposed to find out? When I signed the divorce papers? When you vanished and left me with nothing but questions? His silence was deafening. I nodded to myself, setting the photo down with careful precision. You know. You almost got away with it. I tilted my head, smirking. If you had just let me talk to you instead of shoving me off to your lawyer, I probably wouldn't have dug so deep. But you panicked. And when men like you panic, they make mistakes. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. By the way, I added, glancing over my shoulder, you might want to call your lawyer. His brows furrowed. Why? I smiled sweetly. Because by the time I'm done, you're going to need a much better one. Then I walked out, leaving the door wide open, just like the disaster he had created. I walked out of that apartment without looking back, not because I was done, but because this was just the beginning. He thought he could bury me under a stack of legal paperwork. Thought he could write me off like an inconvenient mistake. But he forgot one thing. I don't lose. I slid into my car, my heart pounding. I had choices now, a lot of them. I could go straight to the other wife, knock on her door and introduce myself. Hi, I'm your husband's first wife. How's your day going? I could go to a lawyer, one of my choosing, not his, and make sure this divorce ended on my terms, not his. Or I could do what every man like him fears the most. I could expose him, publicly, brutally, perfectly. I tapped my fingers against the steering wheel, inhaling deeply. Revenge wasn't just about rage, it was about timing. And I wanted to make sure my dear husband felt every single second of this. Step 1. Gather evidence. I opened my phone and started snapping pictures of the messages he'd sent me, the voicemails where he told me to talk to his lawyer, where he refused to answer a single question. Then I pulled up the photos I had taken in his secret apartment, the framed picture of him and his other wife, the glass of wine, the jacket on the couch. Then, for good measure, I recorded a short video of myself. I looked straight into the camera, keeping my voice steady. This is the man who called me yesterday, out of nowhere, to tell me he wanted a divorce. No warning, no explanation, just talk to my lawyer. But guess what I found out instead? I paused, then turned the camera to show his car, his apartment, his little secret. I stopped recording, smiling to myself. That was just for safekeeping, a little insurance policy. Step 2. Play dumb. I wasn't going to confront him again. Not yet. Let him think I was walking away quietly. Let him believe he'd won. Because while he was getting comfortable, I'd be building my case, tightening the walls around him. Step 3. Strike when he least expects it. I already knew where to start. His employer, his bank accounts, his other wife. If he thought he could juggle 2 marriages without a single consequence, he was about to get the lesson of his life. I smirked, tossing my phone onto the passenger seat. And the best part? I wasn't even angry anymore. I was focused, because the difference between a woman scorned and a woman prepared is that one burns everything in sight, and the other, she makes sure he watches as his entire world goes up in flames. And I was very prepared. The next morning I woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Clarity. No more confusion. No more heartbreak. Just a laser-focused plan to make sure my soon-to-be ex-husband regretted every single decision that led him here. I started with the easiest target, his other wife. Now, I wasn't about to go in guns blazing. No, that would be too easy. I wanted impact. I wanted to shatter the careful little fantasy world he had built. I did a little digging online, social media, public records. It wasn't hard to find her because guess what? She had no idea she was married to a liar either. Her Instagram was full of happy little posts. Married life. My forever. Disgusting. I scrolled through her pictures, my stomach twisting. Their wedding photos were there, their anniversary photos. And the worst part? Their wedding date. He had married her while he was still legally married to me. My grip tightened around my phone. That was all I needed. I composed a message, keeping it simple but brutal. Hey, her name. I know this is going to sound insane, but I need to talk to you. It's about your husband. It's urgent. I attached a picture of my marriage certificate. And then, the framed photo from his apartment, sent. Now, all I had to do was wait. And I didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. Who are you? I smirked. Oh, sweetheart, you're about to find out. I texted back, the woman he married first. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. She was panicking. Good. She should be. Then came the call. I answered on the first ring. Hey, I said, keeping my voice calm. She was not calm. What is this? What are you talking about? He's my husband. We've been married for... I cut her off. 5 years? Yeah, I know. I saw the pictures. The same way I saw your wedding date, which happens to be while he was still legally married to me. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. That's not possible. Yeah, check public records. My name's right there. I let that sink in before twisting the knife. By the way, you ever wonder where he disappears to for business trips? Because I was his business. A strangled noise came from her end. He told me he was divorced. I laughed, shaking my head. Sweetheart, he tried to divorce me. Yesterday, when he called me out of nowhere and told me to talk to his lawyer. Guess he forgot to tell you about that part. Her breathing was shaky. I need to talk to him. Oh, you will? I smiled. But first, we need to talk about what we're going to do next. Because I don't know about you, but I think it's time we teach this man a lesson he'll never forget. The silence on the other end of the line felt like a lifetime. She was processing everything I just said, probably wondering how she hadn't seen the cracks in her so-called perfect marriage. It was painful, I could tell, but I wasn't here for her pity. I wasn't here to comfort her. I wasn't here for anyone's comfort. This wasn't about her, it was about him. I can't believe this, she said finally, her voice trembling. How long have you known? Not long, I replied, my voice chillingly calm. Long enough to know you've been lied to just like I was. Long enough to realize I'm not going to let him get away with this. Not just with you, but with me. With both of us. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other side. She was shocked, and I didn't blame her. No one could ever imagine the man they'd been married to for years could be capable of this kind of betrayal. He'd built an entire second life, one that had gone unnoticed for so long. That's the kind of man I was dealing with. A master manipulator who thought he could juggle two women and never face the consequences. But that was all about to change. I'll help you, I said suddenly, the words falling from my mouth without hesitation. I'll help you take him down. Together we can make sure he's held accountable. For what he's done to us and for what he'll do to anyone else who comes after. There was a pause and I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. She didn't know me, didn't know my story, but something about what I was saying felt right. She was in too deep now, just like I was. There was no way out, not for either of us, and for the first time I could hear the shift in her voice. I don't know where to start, she admitted. I let out a soft laugh, a sound that had no humour in it whatsoever. I'll tell you where to start. First, we gather everything. All of his lies, all of the evidence, every piece of information we can get our hands on. His financial records, his travel history, his accounts, his phone records, everything. But what about him? How do we confront him? She asked. Leave him to me, I said confidently. I'll handle that. We're going to take him down, piece by piece, until he has nothing left. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth. We hung up, and as I sat there staring at my phone, I could feel the adrenaline flooding my veins. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to sit back and let him ruin my life, and the life of another woman. I had power now. I had control, and I was going to use it. The first thing I did was head straight for the local courthouse. The marriage certificate was only the beginning. I needed everything. If I could get my hands on the property records, the legal papers, any documents related to his finances, then I could build the case. And I wasn't stopping there. I was going to take this to the press. I was going to make sure the whole world knew who he was. No one, not a single soul, was going to let him get away with this. The courthouse was quiet when I walked in, but my presence seemed to stir something. Maybe it was the determined look on my face or the way my heels clicked loudly on the linoleum floor. Either way, I knew I was about to get what I needed. After hours of waiting, filing requests, and navigating legal red tape, I finally walked out with a stack of papers in my hand. The truth was right there in black and white. There were more legal documents than I had anticipated. Accounts that led to suspicious transactions, emails with names I didn't recognize, and records that pointed to multiple overseas trips with no apparent reason. My husband, the man I thought I knew, was hiding more than I had ever imagined. But it wasn't just about what I could find. It was about how I used it. When I got home, I sat down and went through everything, my hands shaking as I reviewed each page. I couldn't believe the depth of his lies. He'd been siphoning money from accounts I didn't even know existed. There were purchases made with his business account that didn't make any sense. Luxurious trips, expensive gifts. And there, buried in the middle of the records, were messages. Messages that weren't just to his other wife. There were messages to other women too. I had no idea what to feel. Anger, rage, a sick sense of betrayal. Maybe all three. But as I scanned through the pages, the pieces started to fit together. He had been living this dual life, and now I was going to expose it all. I spent the next few days working with the woman on the other end of the phone. We were a team now, an unlikely one, but a team nonetheless. She was as desperate as I was to make sure he never pulled this stunt again. She gave me the contact information for a lawyer she'd been working with, a woman who specialized in fraud and divorce cases. And together, we made plans. I called her the next morning. Her name was Amanda, and she was brilliant. She didn't hesitate when I told her about my husband's second marriage. We're going after him. This isn't just about divorce. This is about fraud, it's about money, and it's about justice, she said, her voice steady with confidence. We spent hours going over strategies. First, we'd file for an immediate divorce. His divorce from me. We'd cite everything. His financial misconduct, his hidden assets, his marriage to another woman while still legally married to me. It wasn't just about getting out of this mess for me. It was about putting him on blast, letting the world know exactly who he was. And then we'd go after him financially. Every penny he had taken from me, from his other wife, and from whoever else was part of his lies. We'd press charges. We'd dig deeper into his business records, track his movements, and make sure every illegal action he had ever taken came to light. But there was more. I wasn't just going to hit him where it hurt in the courtroom. I was going to hit him where it mattered most. Social media. The story I had was a bombshell. He'd hurt me. He'd hurt her. And now I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what he was capable of. I recorded a short video just like before. Only this time it wasn't a passive reveal. This time, it was an announcement. Hello everyone. My name is Name, and I'm here to expose a man who thought he could live a double life without facing the consequences. I showed the paperwork. I showed the pictures. I told my story, and I made sure to include hers too. I let the world know how my husband had been living a lie. I wasn't just some angry wife ranting about a broken marriage. I was telling the truth, the undeniable truth. And as I posted it, my phone blew up. Comments flooded in. DMS calls. Everyone had something to say. Some supported me. Some called me a victim. Some called me vengeful. But one thing was clear. He was about to lose everything. I didn't just want him to suffer. I wanted him to be forced to confront what he had done. I wanted him to look me in the eyes and realize that I wasn't the person he thought he could walk all over. That I wasn't the naive wife he could discard like trash. I was the woman who would make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of man he was. A coward, a liar, a fraud. As the weeks passed, I continued to build my case, to gather more evidence, and to watch as he squirmed. The once calm, confident man I had married now seemed like a man on the verge of a breakdown. His business was in jeopardy, his reputation was in tatters, his second marriage was teetering on the brink of collapse. The truth was out, and there was no running from it. One day he called me. His voice was shaky. I never meant for any of this to happen. Please, just let me explain. I smirked. You had your chance to explain, and you blew it. This time, when I answered the phone, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even sadistic. I was just calm, cold, and in control. And as I ended the call, I knew he would never forget this lesson. Some lies take years to surface, but once they do, there's no escaping them. And I was the one who brought it all crashing down. As the weeks turned into months, I watched everything crumble around him. His business tanked, his reputation was destroyed. His marriage to her, the woman who had no idea what she'd married into, was in tatters. He was left with nothing but the wreckage of his own making, and every time he tried to put out the fires, another flare-up erupted. But that wasn't the most satisfying part. The most satisfying part? The moment I saw his face. He had no idea how far I'd gone, how many connections I'd made, how many pieces I'd put together. It happened in court. We were there for the final hearing, the moment where his fate would be sealed. He was sitting there, his shoulders slumped, trying to look confident, but his eyes kept darting around nervously. The judge's words were like a sentence being read aloud to him. He knew. He knew it was over. I walked into that courtroom with a calm that sent shivers down his spine. As I took my seat, I saw the brief flicker of fear in his eyes. A man who once thought he could control every situation, every person, was now about to face the consequences of his lies. I leaned forward just enough for him to see my face. A faint smile tugged at my lips, and I whispered to myself, "You thought you could break me. But you didn't know who you were dealing with." The judge slammed the gavel down, sealing his fate. The final papers were signed, and the world, for all its noise and chaos, seemed to go still in that moment. There was no need for words. His face was all the confirmation I needed. As I walked out of that courtroom, the weight that had been on my chest for so long finally lifted. The betrayal, the lies, the years of manipulation, all of it was behind me now. But the best part? The real victory? It wasn't just in the court's decision. It was in the fact that I still had control. Control over my future, over my happiness, over my destiny. And nothing, not even him, could take that away. I stepped out into the daylight, a different person than the one who had walked in. The woman who had been betrayed, lied to, manipulated, and discarded was gone. She had been replaced by a woman who knew her worth, who had fought for herself and come out victorious. And as the doors closed behind me, I realized one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The world had no idea what was coming next. And neither did he.